Good afternoon and welcome to YSIAC's webinar, Professional Development and Building Your Brand in Uncertain Times. My name is Jen Wei and I will be moderating today's session together with my co-moderator, Julie Reneda. Both Julie and I are YSIAC committee members. If you are tuning in today and you have yet to join YSIAC, please do sign up after this webinar. I am delighted to introduce you to our Powerhouse panel of speakers. First, we have Ms Chiann Bao. Chiann is an independent arbitrator and a member of arbitration chambers. She is listed on the panel of the major arbitration institutions and has served as tribunal chair, co-arbitrator, and sole arbitrator in ad hoc and institutional arbitrations under the ICC, UNCITRAL, SIAC, HKIAC, and KCAB rules. She currently serves as a vice president of the ICC Court of Arbitration and is the chair of the ICC Commission's Task Force on ADR and Arbitration. She is also an honorary senior fellow of the British Institute of International and Commercial Law. Welcome, Chiann. The second speaker is Ms. Swee. Swee is a partner in the Commercial and Corporate Disputes and International Arbitration Practices at Wong Partnership. She is the vice chair of the IBA Arbitration Committee. She is also the vice chair of the IPBA Dispute Resolution and Arbitration Committee and a member of the editorial board of the ICC Dispute Resolution Bulletin and the ICCA ASIL Task Force on Damages. She was also formerly the co-chair of the YSIAC committee. She is recognized as one of the world's leading arbitration practitioners in Who's Legal Arbitration 2020 and is highly recommended for her arbitration and litigation practice in various publications, including the Legal 500 and Chambers Global. Welcome, Swee.
Hi, everybody.
Our third speaker is Ms. Elaine Wong. Elaine is a partner at Herbert Smith Freehills in Singapore. She has been practicing as an international arbitration specialist for over 13 years. She represents clients in cross-border disputes across a range of industries with particular expertise in energy, technology, infrastructure, and manufacturing sectors. In addition to her work as counsel, Elaine also sits as arbitrator. Prior to joining Herbert Smith Freehills Singapore office, Elaine practiced for 9 years in Tokyo and 3 years in Paris. Elaine is a dual qualified lawyer in Singapore and in England and Wales. Welcome, Elaine.
Thanks, Jen Wei, and hello, everyone.
Last but certainly not least, we have Ms. Cho Pei Lin. Pei Lin started her career as a litigation lawyer after graduating from NUS Law Faculty. She left practice to do public relations and is a pioneer in introducing litigation PR to Singapore. Her forte includes providing strategic PR consultancy in public and legal affairs, public education campaign communications, corporate communications, crisis communications, and government relations. She has also been engaged to support various ministries in the introduction of new or amended legislations in Singapore. Most recently, Pei Lin has also led a team in providing various strategic PR work for communications approach during the COVID-19 situation for several clients, including the PAP Community Foundation and NTUC Enterprise Group of Social Enterprises, including the Fair Price Group. Before I hand the time over to my co-moderator, Julie, I would like to draw your attention to the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. We would love for this session to be interactive and for the speakers to answer all of your questions if possible. Please type your questions into the Q&A box and we will direct them to the speakers at the appropriate time. I will now hand over the time to Julie.
Thank you, Jen Wei. Welcome to all of you who are joining us virtually. The idea of today's webinar is to discuss how the COVID-19 impacts our lives as arbitration practitioners, but from the perspective of your personal development, your career. This situation is unprecedented, brings new challenges that were not anticipated. Most of us, I believe, still work from home. We can no longer travel as we used to. Going to an arbitration conference is, I guess, wishful thinking nowadays. So how can we overcome these new challenges? How can we best adapt and maybe even benefit from this situation? These are all the questions and topics we'd like to address with you and with our speakers today. To kick off, Paylin, our PR specialist, thanks again for joining us. The first topic I'd like to address is about building one's brand in this time. And my question for you is, how can arbitration practitioners, especially young practitioners, enhance their visibility, build their profile, build their brand within the arbitration community? And maybe how is that different from what it used to be?
I guess this is something that I always do share with my friends who are from the legal fraternity when they ask me. And I will actually ask them back the question, and especially to the younger lawyers, who would you list as some of the best litigators in Singapore? And inevitably, we would have names, senior counsels like Mr. Davinder Singh, possibly, okay, maybe I shouldn't name any other senior counsels in case I miss naming some of them. But my point would be then, if you think that Mr. Davinder Singh is a great litigator, have you actually watched him litigate in court? And most of them would say, no, I've never personally watched him litigate in court. Then how do you know he's the best litigator in town? And then the answer would be, because everybody else says so, you know, and the newspapers say so, then he must be quite a good litigator. And I guess that really is what branding, positioning, and publicity can do for somebody, that whilst we may not have experienced it ourselves, but because we've heard about it, we've read about it, and because there's affirmation and confirmation from third parties, we therefore believe that the food in this restaurant must be very good if the Straits Times and several other magazines say that it's very good. And until you actually try it yourself otherwise. And I guess that is probably the starting point. How do you get people to talk about you, to write about you, and to know you? It was a lot easier in the past when the fraternity or the profession was a lot smaller. I belong to the generation where there were only 150 of us who graduated from law school locally. And so in terms of opportunities, it was a lot easier. And I appreciate that today that there are a lot more young professionals joining the industry. And with older practitioners working till forever, then I guess the other part of it is in terms of opportunities to actually showcase that, hey, I'm good. And if I'm I would say first 5 to 10 years of practice, I may never actually be able to conduct a file all by myself or be the lead counsel. And that's again where the challenge sometimes is. Then how do I tell people how good I am? I had that that challenge when I moved from law to PR. Because in the PR world, I was a nobody back then, and nobody knew who I was, and I had no credentials to show for. And I guess it, reflecting on my own journey, it was a lot of firstly trying to network and get to know people. I joined all kinds of associations and organizations to get to know more people. It helped that from school time, I was one of those students with 10 different CCAs at the same time. So I enjoy taking part in extra work outside of my main work serving in different committees, like actually all of you in your capacity here at YSIAC, for example. And that is a good starting point of getting to know more people outside of your work. 20 years ago, the only way to do that is to squeeze something in the mainstream news, like the Straits Times or other platforms like Channel News Asia, etc. Today, there are actually a lot more options available to the individual. Apart from marketing through your firm's website and collaterals, there is actually a lot of opportunities online and on platforms that range from LinkedIn to Facebook. So there are people who feel that I should only do professional stuff on LinkedIn, and my Facebook should be where I post pictures of my children or my food. But it is not necessarily true. For several reasons. I myself, I don't really differentiate it so clearly. Of course, I do not post pictures of my food on my LinkedIn, but it does not stop me from sharing about my professional experience on Facebook. And I recognize that I have friends and clients and ex-clients on my Facebook as my friends and people who follow me. And if I share, for example, the type of work that I'm doing, sometimes the results, if they are not confidential, in a very natural way, and that's a difficult balance sometimes. How do I do that without sounding like I'm showing off, you know? Then I guess that is sometimes one way of reminding people of who you are and the type of work that you do. Because I think whether it's arbitration or litigation, it's usually about who comes to mind first for in-house counsels when deciding. Of course, many of the bigger organizations have a panel of lawyers that they can tap on and use. But even within that, then how do you fight to make sure that your name comes up eventually at some point in time? I've seen some very good examples of people sharing opinions. So for example, there's a new law passed. There's the Singapore Convention on Mediation that's ongoing, and it will come into force soon. What are your views about it? You can't get your opinion pieces published by the Straits Times immediately, but you could share it on your own platforms. And I think that's where the best first steps are.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Pauline. Indeed, I mean, the importance of social networks is ever growing, especially right now. But I'd like to just to come back on something you said about networking. We know how, I mean, the importance of networking, especially in our field. We attend many arbitration conferences, often not only for what the speakers have to say, but also because we're going to meet our colleagues, our peers, we're going to be able to network. So Swee, and how do you network while confined at home?
I wanted to echo some of the things that Pauline said, and I think particularly in the disputes world, it's very important about who comes to mind first. So as much as I believe that there's a great importance in positioning, messaging, and in branding, I also believe in sustainability in branding. So what I think most young practitioners face, which is difficult at the start, and particularly in a virtual environment, is getting there in the first place, right? So I find it even more difficult for young practitioners to be able to network in a totally remote and virtual environment. So one of the things which I find perhaps young arbitration practitioners can still, and how they can still network effectively without the in-person meeting, is actually to do what Pauline mentioned earlier. I find opinion pieces are really important. Particularly in sort of the disputes world, what I what always stops me when I'm just reading articles, and I generally read a lot. So I read daily news, I read daily legal developments, whether is it Singapore, globally, but generally about international arbitration. And one of the resources that I always look to is Kluwer. And to be honest, when I've come across some of the practitioners writes up on these pieces, and they may be writing a simple commentary on a particular case, and they give their own views on why they think this particular case is the way, how they think they could use this to sort of develop the practice of international arbitration. And I actually take note of the author of that particular article. So I've been reading pieces about like Section 1782 of the US, you know, how it can be used to aid international arbitration. And to me, I think this is something that is very important in our field. Because in our field, it's not all just about being nice and socializing and drinking. I think the credibility is extremely important if you want a sustainable career. So it's always easy to meet people, which you see at networking events. And the first thing you say is that, oh, he's really nice. Oh, she's really nice. Very friendly person. But I'm sure you want to be remembered for more than just being that friendly person, that nice person, that smiles to everyone in the room. So you got to think, what is it that's going to make you different? What is it that's going to make you memorable? And I find that writing, and not just writing random pieces, but writing well is very important. Paylin also mentioned something very interesting, which she said that there's actually a lot more options available to us these days when it comes to networking. And I have to say, I agree. In fact, technology is a great enabler. In fact, I think that younger people these days with technology should be doing better than what we used to do in the past. And I consider myself the past, right? Because you see, I'm no longer part of YSIAC. Yeah, so I find that it's a great enabler because there are so many more platforms for you to be able to reach out to people, and you're able to reach out to people from all over the world. If we were having a physical conference, for instance, we would not be able to attract, if everyone is listening in, more than 250 participants. We will probably have a group of 60 to 80 who are actually there in person because they have to travel down to the venue, they have to fly into, if we're having this in Singapore, to attend it. But because of technology, we are able to outreach to anyone from the comforts of their own homes. And not just do we have a Zoom platform, Paylin mentioned, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have all these different platforms. But I think it is important to know who you are and what is the message you're trying to sell. And there's no right or wrong. There's no right, there's no magic to it. It's a matter of your own image and what you're comfortable with. So for instance, I'm very, very, very bad with social media. So I don't actually do much of like Instagram or even LinkedIn. I don't even know how to share. Each time my firm puts up a post, I actually have to ask my Marcom, how do I share this on my personal page? And I think today I've shared 2 posts. And I feel that maybe I should learn more. Maybe I should do better in that regard. But I think each and every one of us got to know where our strengths are and what is the image that we want to present. Yeah, so that's another thing. But I think people who are good at social media, people who are good at online media, they should make use of it to their advantage. But the third thing that I want to mention is, and maybe it's just from my perspective, at the end of the day, I think, at least in the field of international arbitration, I think quite a lot of the practitioners are quite, how should I put it? They are quite, they love the law. I think most international arbitration practitioners who are in it really love it. Like, oh, they love to talk about developments. Like, it's funny, but there's a lot of nerd talk around. Like people will talk about this person, this development, this new technique that we use in this arbitration. And somehow, because I think that's the circuit we live in, if you tend to be a bit more, how would I say, too open about your entire personal life, I'm not sure whether there's something or whether there's necessarily a message that will go down well. But to each his own, because I always believe if you are so great, no matter who you are personally, people will come to you. So, you know, That's what I want to share. So write opinion pieces, use webinars like what we're doing now to keep in touch and network.
Thanks, Swee, and that's very, very true, I believe. And Chiann, I was wondering, are you more the type of writing pieces or reaching out on social media? How do you network at the moment?
Yeah, thank you, Julie. And it's good to follow Swee because she always has some good points. So I'm going to start by piggybacking off of some of her points. One is in which social media and how it can work for you. Now, I think it's not consistent as to how it can work for each type of individual. And by that, I mean, as an arbitrator, I'm a full-time independent arbitrator. It's not something that I am proactively seeking to be on social media all the time or engage with, reacting to social posts, etc. And it's something that I will scroll down and pass the time and during a commute to review, but it's not something that I'm always engaging with actively. And so every person has a different perspective as to how they want to utilize social media. Certainly for, the younger professionals who are not necessarily getting this speaking opportunities, or maybe they haven't had an opportunity to write, or they're looking for their first opportunity, social media is certainly a great way to start engaging. And by that, one of the things that I've experienced is certain individuals cold calling me. They've seen I've written on something, or they're just engaged with the work that I'm doing, and they've asked for advice. And certainly in this era, we have seen many young professionals or young students who have graduated who are having difficulty finding jobs, or young professionals who don't necessarily know with certainty how their career will progress. These are individuals who should take the bold step and call the person that they want to speak with and get some advice from. There's no harm in doing that, I promise. Nobody's going to hang up on you or slam the door in your face. I'm sure everyone here on this webinar would welcome a call from somebody we don't know. And I think that that's part of what we have responsibility to do as people who kind of are within that network already. In addition to what Swee said with writing, the other element that I would add is committee work. Now, many years ago, there were maybe 3 different committees to be on. Now there are 1,005 committees to be on. So every organization has, a main board, a young board, a young board, and so there are many ways to integrate into the community and just get to start to know people. I mean, I do think that the nice factor does make a difference, especially once you're engaging and interacting on a substantive level and creating a project together or working on a project together. And I have found great fulfillment in doing that kind of work. So that's something that I would really encourage folks to do. There's always opportunity for volunteering. People are always needing, institutions are always needing, volunteers to do this and that. And it might not be terribly substantive initially, but people get to know you and your attitude and your personality, and they will want to work with you again. And so that's kind of, I think, how it builds sometimes.
Yeah, and on the point of there are so many platforms out there these days, we have an interesting question coming from Patrick McGonigal, who asked, how do you stand out? There are almost too many platforms. And I think that's also a question that is linked to my next topic, which is, business development. How can we approach clients these days? Clients are indeed bombarded with articles, free know-how by every law firm and lawyers. How can we differentiate ourselves and build our brand? I don't know, Paylene, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah. So when I first started out doing PR, one of the first organizations I joined was the PR industry kind of association. And then after I hang out with them a while, I took part in committees, and I realized that it was good meeting people from the industry because you get to learn more about knowledge and know-hows. But none of them were gonna give me work because they were my competitors. So then where do I find my clients, right? My potential clients, and how do I network with them? One interesting, I came across, I got to know somebody who is a younger lawyer, and she shared with me that, so I asked her, what kind of work do you do? And she said, yeah, I started doing this, but I ended up now with most of my clients who are real estate people, like developers, and they manage malls or developments. And I said, how do you get to that, right? How do you get to know them? How do you move into the area? And she shared with me that she actually took up a course in a US real estate department. She did some kind of executive certificate course for a few days, or it wasn't a master's at all. It was just a short course. But that allowed her to get to know her whole class, she said, was filled with these real estate senior practitioners. And they are not lawyers. They were, well, they were people who became friends, who became clients. And so I guess when the government says during COVID, if you have some time, go and upgrade yourself, do something with your skills future credits, it probably may not be that you need a master's in law or another training course related to law. And so what if you don't get some CBD points or whatever for it? Go do something else where you could meet potential clients. And I guess that is a good possibility of business development during this period. I've also known people, like I have a colleague who went to study Japanese language for fun. It started out, and then it became very useful when she met a client who is from a Japanese company, and they were thrilled that, oh my God, somebody knows Japanese, like as much as it's not very good Japanese, but she then got referred by that client to a few more Japanese clients, and before you know it, she became sort of like the go-to person, the Singaporean in Singapore who knows Japanese and for Japan companies here. She then started to do more advanced language classes in Japanese, because, hey, it looks like it's useful after all. So in more ways than one, that's some examples of how you could possibly stand out. I've known people who can speak excellent Chinese, and as a result, they get very good referrals from Chinese companies. And during the COVID season, whilst it's not easy to go knock on doors to say hello, one possibility is to upgrade yourself, explore new courses and new platforms where you could meet potential clients. So that's how one suggestion.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for this very good piece of advice, looking a bit outside the box and outside the legal work sometimes. I'd like to stay on the topic of building your brand, but a bit under a slightly different angle. So we've discussed how important it is to raise your profile externally in the arbitration community and globally, as a matter of fact, in this field. But it is also important to build your profile internally, and especially for younger practitioners, to move up the ladder within your organization. And so my question, Ellen, for you is, how do you keep relevant internally? How do you raise your profile within the firm? Do you have any tips to do that? Because obviously everyone is on his or her own at home. So
yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, Julie. I mean, It's obviously not a problem that is contained within our young practitioners group. I think everyone is facing the same kind of challenge. I think what is good, maybe in the times of COVID-19, and I'll be the first person to say that I really hate it. I'm not a person for the lockdown. I'm not one of those people going, yeah, I'm so happy that the dolphins are swimming in the canals in Venice. I really wish that this would be over. But it is true that there must be something good in everything bad that happens to us. So I find that one of the great things that has arisen out of this crisis is the use of technology like Zoom or Skype or whatever. And what that has meant for us in my firm especially is that we're able to connect across our global network. So I think we have 27 offices around the world. And for instance, in the past, if we had an arbitration group meeting, you know, it might be hosted, for example, in London. And then the people in London would actually be in a room together physically, the rest of us are dialing in. And you sort of feel as if you're on the sidelines. So, you know, you're not sure if there's a conversation going on already that you're not part of and you don't really want to interrupt. But now everyone is on the screen. Everyone has an equal opportunity to speak. And so, I mean, I think that's really, really good in terms of working across different offices and jurisdictions. So that's one good thing, I think, that has come out of this crisis. And I can say that within my firm, I think we're going to continue using these sort of platforms for internal discussions. Another thing which I think the younger generation is really good with is they have their finger on the pulse of developments. So I think we've spoken about how, you know, you can write articles, and obviously a lot of people are interested in the academic side of things. But there are other ways that we can extend our profile, or other initiatives that young people would be suited to leading. So apart from obviously social activities, they could organize fun events where people can get together and network. I think, for example, issues relating to diversity and inclusivity, for example, sometimes the older generation is a bit out of touch as to how that's supposed to be implemented in real life. I mean, we all want to do the right thing, but to really understand the challenges that, you know, minorities face, I think it's helpful to hear from a diverse group of participants. So, for example, in the arbitration world, you know, we have the pledge about gender equality. I mean, if people want to lead an initiative on that and start something within your organization or even externally, I'm pretty sure that would be well received, and lots of clients as well would be interested in participating in events like that.
Swee, and have you in your firm implemented similar means of communication and similar meetings?
Within the firm, definitely we
How
still
have you kept in touch?
Yes, so I think unfortunately, because of the way the restrictions are put in place by the government, so we have to, the only way we can keep in touch is to do Zoom calls. And I'm sure that all of you also know that other than Zoom calls, we try to motivate each other and motivate my team by giving them Zoom treats. So, you know, you buy dinners, you buy drinks, and then everybody gets together. That's how we try to survive. I never ever thought that I'll be able to actually do a remote hearing, arbitration hearing remotely, sitting in my own study without my team, and with tribunal members, witnesses all dialing in from different jurisdictions, like from Switzerland, London, India, Singapore. And amazingly, it actually has worked. So I think this crisis, to a certain extent, actually is helps us to become better. Because I'm also someone like Elaine. I treasure very much the in-person meeting, and I love the conferences and the ability, for instance, after this conference, that we can all get together and we can have a drink and meet each other and speak to persons of various pockets. But at the same time, that is not to say I don't try to make use of what is currently available to me, that I actually can get more things done because I don't have to travel. I save time on traveling. I save time on my flights. And I think that is a great plus.
And I mean, I think it's a fact, yes, and it's true. But on the other hand, especially for young practitioner, you know, the training aspect, the continued education is very important. I remember I was learning a lot when I was more junior by, you know, exchanging with my colleagues on a daily basis, observing senior people partners in my firm. And I remember also storming into my boss's offices because I thought I had a brilliant idea. And this is no longer possible. So how do you, as a young practitioner, compensate the lack of physical interactions?
I have to say there's something that really is extremely valuable. And unfortunately, because of the way that we are working now over the past 3 months, that is the one thing that we no longer do. So we no longer can just walk into someone's room, and then when you have a bright idea and you say that, hey, you know what, I'm thinking about this, and you just discuss and just kick off the discussion. So that doesn't happen, because you don't just like Zoom call someone and just expect him or her to be available. So much as that, I think, is gone. So we have to, in a sense, make up for it. So how we make up for it is that we are much more scheduled now. So instead of the, you know, the grades like, oh, brainstorm and then I suddenly walk into someone's room, we just have more pockets of meetings in a day. So my schedule now is actually busier than when I used to be in the office, because now every single thing I am scheduling. So I have a call at 9, I have a call at 9:30, I have a call at 10, I have a 11, and each are just like different teams of people in my team working on different files, just getting together to talk about the case. Because to be honest, I find that sometimes just talking about something is so much more efficient than writing an email about it. And people are so much more efficient when they speak in person, and they are better sometimes at conveying a very simple idea rather than to draft a one-page email, which takes a lot of time to read. So I think because of that, now where we are working in, we have to be much more deliberate about setting up these meetings to ensure that we still have these discussions with the juniors so that they continue to get involved in the thought process and to have that training. So I think that's important.
I couldn't agree more. And we have a question coming from Claria Wong, who says, would you recommend young professionals to seek arbitral clerkship, virtual arbitral clerkship during this time? Any do's and don'ts in this regard? Maybe that's a question for Chiann.
Yeah, I've actually had a couple of people approach me during this period for internships, etc. And I think that it's a great idea for young professionals to seek out these opportunities, because you don't know which arbitrators or which independent practitioners need support, and you might just catch them at the right time. Sometimes you don't, but there's no harm in trying. So I would really, again, similar to my points about cold calling, I would encourage young professionals to seek out opportunities or a collaboration on writing pieces. Back to Swee Ann's point, I've now co-authored certain articles with individuals, and it gives both of us an opportunity to think about a topic and grapple with it with people having different amounts of time to spend on it. So I think I would encourage it.
Right. And another, I think, important topic, related topic, is mentoring. Elaine, is, in your view, mentoring still relevant and important right now? Even more important?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find that people who are more experienced do enjoy mentoring. I think that maybe a lot of young practitioners are a bit hesitant, thinking, oh, I'll just take up somebody's time, or am I a burden to that person? But I think the more senior mentor usually enjoys helping somebody or speaking to that younger practitioner and trying to understand what challenges they're facing or their views on any given topic. And I can say that generally people are far more excited by bright young talent than old fogies. I mean, I think it's really exciting when I meet a young trainee or associate who you can tell is just brilliant and is one day really going to be somebody, you know, who with a very successful career. I genuinely enjoy watching that person's growth, and if I can be a part of it, I'd be very happy to help. The other thing I wanted to say was that there's a trend now for reverse mentoring. I think that's quite interesting, and we've started implementing that at HSF. And what it means would be that the younger associate would perhaps mentor a partner. Doesn't have to be a partner in the same office, so you know, you can keep a bit of distance. So usually somebody who's running this program will match the mentor and the mentee, and it gives the younger lawyer the chance to get to know partners in other offices and to hear what's going on. And also, I think what the senior partner can learn from the younger lawyer is, for example, technology. One of the things we're doing would be that the young associate would try and help partner figure out all sorts of things, like from working a Zoom call or anything more complicated in terms of technology. And really, you would find that a lot of senior people really need those lessons, myself included, and would be very grateful for someone who is willing to take the time to teach us how things work. And while we're doing that session, obviously we get to know each other and find out more about what work that person is doing, and even just chat about personal stuff. So I think both mentoring and reverse mentoring are worth exploring.
Yeah, I love this idea of two-way mentoring, and I'd love to get mentored on tech issues. But I think it's also important to take time to discuss, as you said, Ellen, personal issues right now, because we are not sharing coffee as we used to, but still take the time to talk about the case, yes, the case strategy, but also personal and how everybody is dealing with this situation, which is quite stressful. Now let's try to be a little bit more specific and give some tips to the participant and how they can make the difference. Chiann, what do you think are the red oceans and blue oceans in arbitration these days?
Yes, thank you, Julie. I have to say I had to look up blue oceans and red oceans. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of think about that concept, and the blue oceans being, by definition, outside of the box thinking, a non-competitive environment, and a way to really maximize on the opportunities and think really creatively and innovatively. And I quite like that idea. And certainly there are many blue oceans in arbitration. And we've talked about this numerous times, and that is technology, especially as a young professional. Really, I mean, you have grown up with technology, and certainly you should utilize that to the maximum of your ability and really become an indispensable part of your team by being the one who is at the forefront of every different type of technology. You know, there is more than just Zoom and Teams and on. And so learning about all of these different technologies that are available, and Opus, I dealt with Opus for the first time recently, and I thought that was a brilliant, I mean, I'm not trying to necessarily give these software technology, but really just getting to know these different types of options for your partner and for the tribunal really brings properly added value to the hearing experience or to any interaction that you might have. I've been also working quite a bit on procedural innovation, and that being not just arbitration, but really like integrating all ADR services. As the chair of the ICC Task Force on Arbitration and ADR, we're really grappling with preventing disputes or integrating dispute resolution boards within different types of dispute existing dispute resolution mechanisms. And these types of things we have to be thinking about now, because the new normal will be different, and we don't know what that difference will be, but we have all of these existing tools to grapple with. And so I think it behooves us who, you know, have the luxury of time and time to think, and not everybody does. And so we do have to be conscious of that. But those who do have time, start thinking outside the box. Don't think linearly. There are many opportunities. Not everything has been done before, despite what very senior practitioners might try to tell you. So that's the blue oceans in arbitration. With regard to red oceans, now this is where it's the concept I understand is where there's blood poured into the ocean, and so it's a very competitive environment. It's a terrible thought to kind of image to kind of think about, but that's as I understand the concept. And so red oceans in my mind are something that, I mean, in arbitration, of course there are, and the structures that many of you are engaged with, law firms or different opportunities where there's only one spot at the top, pyramid kind of opportunities, that is difficult. And I understand that. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast and the structures that exist. And so it's very difficult to kind of navigate in this zone when you are on lockdown and aren't able to engage in the way that you would normally engage in person. So I personally don't really have that much. I think the other speakers will have much better views on how to kind of navigate yourself through these red oceans. But I do think that the community is small that we have in arbitration, even though it is growing. But fundamentally, we are in a close-knit community whereby even if this opportunity doesn't work out, this current structure doesn't work out, if you do a good job at whatever you're doing, whether it be an article that you're writing, whether it be supporting, you know, a senior person outside of your firm, whether it be getting involved with committee work, you just never know where those opportunities are going to come from. And so don't be so, try not to be so focused on, you know, the confines of your immediate structures.
Right. And Ellen, do you have anything to add to this? And how can young arbitration practitioners seize those opportunities out there?
Sorry, I think you can hear all that grass cutting right outside my house. Yeah, I know. I think just like Chiann, I actually hadn't heard of red and blue ocean, so had to Google that as well. I mean, I think, look, the legal world, especially working in a law firm, is always competitive. I think we have to acknowledge that. And in fact, I think that may be a reason why many of us do it. Some of us thrive under competition, right? So if there's none of that, you probably might slack off and you may not achieve everything that you are capable of. So in and of itself, it's definitely not harmful. But I think instead of thinking of it as a zero-sum game, I think what is perhaps slightly different these days is that when we're all in the middle of a crisis, people sort of feel a sense of solidarity. So, you know, I know, for example, that most of you are sitting around at home like me. You're not out, you know, doing something completely different. And already there's a bit of that connection in a crisis. And that applies globally because so many countries are facing the same kind of problems as we are. So I think just maybe leveraging on that, working together with people and collaborating more on things, I think that will help you stand out, because actually it's not about the individual. The more you have, or the more you do things together with other people who are very talented and interesting and influential, I think you'll be part of a group that achieves more, and obviously, you know, your profile will rise as well together with that. So I think it's quite an organic process in a way.
Thank you. I fully agree with this. And we talk about these new skills that we should develop right now, tech being one of them. Elaine, do you think of other competencies or skills that one should have to stand out in these special times we are living?
I think you need to stand out even without COVID, right? Come on. And the truth is, if you think about it, when there's no COVID everybody is so busy with everything else. For example, you may have written a great short piece on LinkedIn about the new law or the upcoming amendments to something. And who's going to read it? Because they are busy traveling, they're busy meeting people and working, etc. And during COVID, people actually have more attention for stuff like that because they're at home. And so I started to log in more to my own LinkedIn because I was at home and I wasn't able to go out. So I think if you look at it from a positive point of view, this is a time where a lot of people actually have a lot more attention for other things apart from their own lives. So that's one way to look at it. We talked earlier about, so, okay, I'm going to write my own stuff in my own LinkedIn. I don't even have more than 100 people on my network. So where do I start? So the reality is it's going to be really tough for you to convince Mui Hong from the Straits Times to publish your opinion piece. But it's going to be a lot easier if you go to someone like the newspaper or Today Online or Yahoo, for example. If you look at certain publications online, Tech in Asia is one of them. They have plenty of people in the startup field wanting to contribute articles to them, but they have very few lawyers going to them with legal opinions and interview opportunities. Same thing for certain radio stations and certain other platforms. And these are all possibilities of where you could go and propose ideas. Some people say, do you expect me to email the editor directly? Yeah, email people directly. And if you really can't do it, and you're lucky enough to belong to a firm where you have a marketing department, tell them, hey, I've got something, I want it here, and go email them and help me get it there. Because we all know, even the bigger firms with the marketing department, they're servicing like 300 lawyers. They won't have time for you unless you tell them, I want it there. So these are the various opportunities I feel where it's lower hanging fruit for you to stand out. If you have an article in say Yahoo, I mean, okay, it may not be the best news platform, but it's not bad. A lot of people still read Yahoo News. And you can then further amplify that by sharing the link of your article in your own social media platform. So that's one possibility of doing that.
Thanks a lot, Elaine. And there is a question actually coming from the participants. What do you think are the advantages of having a PR professional in a law firm?
Extremely advantageous, of course. I mean, I started out doing PR back then for a law firm. My law firm, actually. I resigned from my law firm as a litigator. I started doing PR, went back to my old boss and said, I think you need PR. And then back then my boss said, really, what is PR? So I'm still figuring that out, but I think you need it. So let's try it out, And I was with Harry Elias back then. And I made like announcements for the firm, newspapers announcements. We brought in media conferences. We had full feature interviews, and I secured like a series on Channel 8, like 10 episodes about get to know the law. And they simplified the law on TV for people in Chinese. It was tough, but it worked out well. And like I said, because everybody say a particular lawyer is very good, all the newspaper keep referring and quoting a few lawyers. The industry started believing that they must be very good lawyers because they are quoted all the time. But if you speak to the editors or the reporters, and I've spoken to this Zhao Bao, very, very, very veteran reporter, I said, why do you keep quoting this Chinese lawyer in your articles? And she says, because he's the only one who picked up my phone. you know, and give me a quote immediately. Everybody else says, I need to clear my firm. And that takes 3 days. I don't have 3 days. I need just to put 3 sentences in about this case or this law, and he gives it to me. So I keep calling him. So there are advantages to the extent that a PR person is always in touch with the media and understands publicity platforms and could help to secure good opportunities. But that person must be a good PR person now. But there are disadvantages, because when it becomes too big, then they will say you cannot talk to the media until you clear us. You must get our approval. Then it gets like, oh my God, seriously, why do I need your approval to talk to a reporter? So it's a fine balance that you have to deal with. I have, after working with Harry E for almost 4 years, I decided then that I will never want to have law firms as my clients. And I've never had a law firm as my client. I always just tell lawyers, be my friend, and I'll be happy to give you some tips. Refer clients to me, your clients, because I do litigation PR, but I don't want lawyers as my clients anymore. They're very difficult people.
Well, thank you very much. We're very grateful for sharing, for you sharing your tips today, Elaine. I'd like to move to another topic, a bit difficult one. We know the COVID-19 has put lots of pressure on law firms. Some have instituted a hiring freeze. Some firms even had to let go some employees. If you are looking for a new position, how should you approach recruitment? Is it a good time to change position? I know this is especially hard for young practitioners, but also for young graduates who are looking for the first position. Swee, do you want to have a go at this one?
Actually, I agree with you that the current climate is actually very difficult if someone who is very junior, who doesn't have the credentials and who doesn't have the experience, then wishes to change job in this climate. I'm not necessarily sure whether that is a wise move to try to look for a different position like now. I mean, in a sense, let's say if you've been retrenched and then you have no choice and then you have to look for a new job, then I can understand. But to sort of like change at this juncture, I'm not necessarily sure is wise. And the reason why I say that is because most of the firms that I know and my friends in the international law firms who are not based in Singapore, but in New York firms, in London, and also some firms in Singapore, there is a hiring freeze generally. So when there's generally a hiring freeze in the market, it does mean that it will not be easy to sort of get a job unless there's something just special or exceptional about you. So may not be the best time to change jobs. If in a sense you have no choice, you have to look for a new job because your current position is no longer sustainable, then I think it's good to keep and to sort of continue to keep your network broad, make inquiries, but at the end of the day also know what is it that you want, right? Because I mean, I'm the recruitment partner of my firm, and sometimes when I look at, and these are fresh graduates, and when they apply to say 10 law firms for a training contract, then I don't quite really understand what is it that they are doing. Like, and if the 10 law firms are very different, like different sizes, different types of practice, so then you wonder what is it that he or she really wants. Is he or she just looking for a job? And then if the person is just looking for a job, I guess sort of in our disputes practice or as a recruitment partner, I'm not looking for someone who just is looking for a job, because I'm looking for someone who is building the firm together with me, who is committed to the firm, who's staying here for the long run. So I guess even in this climate, if you're just looking around, it's also important to also know what you want and not just do a. I'm not someone who believes in a sort of like a shotgun approach. I always believe in a focused approach to doing things. Yeah.
Thanks, Swee. And Ellen, do you have a different perspective on career moves?
I mean, I think I agree. Now's probably not the best time. I think even if you were to find a new position, it is a bit difficult to integrate into a team when we're all doing work remotely. The only thing I can think of perhaps would be there would be movement, I suppose, in and out of organizations. So some people might leave Singapore, for example, because of COVID-19, they have reasons they want to be close to their families or things like that. And so obviously there might be positions opening up, and there's difficulty in terms of getting people from abroad to come to Singapore at this stage. So there might be opportunities there, but I guess just keep an eye on things and see how it goes.
So a cautious approach at the moment. Right. Now I'd like to look a bit at what the future holds. We've seen many changes in the legal profession, in the arbitration world, because of the COVID-19, no travel, remote working, but also in technologies, the procedure in the practice of arbitration. Chiann, do you think that the changes we are seeing now are here to stay? And if yes, is this a good thing?
I think the longer this continues, the more the answer would be yes. Because we are now starting to develop behaviors and routines that are different than what we had 3 months ago. What I'm also seeing is that the world is disjointed in how it's opening up, right? And so until the whole world opens up, we're seeing a long slog, I think. And so my prediction is that, yes, we will see some changes, and they will be here to stay because we will have enough time to change behavior. In terms of what kind of changes they are, I think that we will be much more deliberate in how we travel. Law firms certainly will be thinking hard about the type of travel they allow their colleagues and their partners to engage in. And I don't think it will be as easy to get approval as it has been in the past. And partners will, and individuals will also think twice about the value of traveling and think more deliberately about where and how and why you were traveling. And so I think that there will be much more thinking around that aspect. I think there will also be more use of technology for the substantive area, for the hearings specifically, and for even meeting with clients. Clients are not going to be paying their lawyers to come for a lunch, and clients are not going to be paying their 30-member team for a hearing if it's not necessary. So they have their own pressures, and that will of course then trickle down to law firms. And so there will be many pressure points to keep these changes. One of the things that I've been seeing is the lack of consciousness of time zones. I don't know if you're dealing with Europe, Julie, or you're doing with US, Suyen, or India or whatnot. Oftentimes time zones just become this thing that nobody really can grapple with because it's just there's so many meetings being fixed that it's impossible to always spend that 10 minutes, or even the secretary or whoever you have supporting you think that closely about the time zones. And so in recent weeks, I've been spending many nights until 3 a.m. doing things that I just didn't think about closely enough. And then suddenly you find yourself in this 4 p.m. till 3 a.m. like Zoom session. And so we have to think about that aspect. I mean, the part of me doing that though is the alternative to that would then be traveling. And so I don't want to always miss out on opportunities that I can easily say yes to by doing in a late hour and going to bed in my own bed at night, so that I don't have to, when we do open up from COVID pandemic, I can say I'm very accessible. I don't have to physically be there because I'm happy to do a 1:30 a.m., 2:30 a.m. call.
Yeah, and I think remote working is also part of the situation. And can we, in fact, speak of a new normal in the arbitration world? Elaine, and what is it? What does it look like, this new normal?
I think it's hard to predict the future, obviously. I think we're all watching closely at developments, but yeah, I mean, travel is obviously going to play a big part in our lives. So whether or not we can travel and the extent to which we can travel, where we can travel to. I think that the most important bit of the arbitration process is the evidential hearing, right? So, you know, you can do all of the procedural stuff online and on a telephone call if you need to, but when it comes to the hearing, I think a lot of parties and lawyers are struggling with that. So in a case where I'm sitting as arbitrator, I mean, parties have agreed to postpone the hearing for a few months to see if we can convene physically, but if we can't, then I suppose we're to go ahead virtually. And I think that's something that lawyers can cope with. So from my perspective as arbitrator, or if I'm in the counsel team, I think we can get on with it, even though it's a lot of work and it's inconvenient. What I worry about is the fact that the clients themselves may not be very fond of this new virtual approach, because I think for a company, a client has paid a lot of money for the arbitration. They want to be able to see the tribunal members, they want to look them in the eye and be part of the process and feel as if their case is truly being heard and determined in a fair manner. And so if they can't travel to the venue of the arbitration, I wonder whether the clients may then start thinking, well, what's the point of having international arbitration in the future? So I hope we don't get to that stage. I hope there will be solutions. And I think we all have to expect that in the future, there will be a combination at the very least of a physical hearing and a virtual hearing. I think we all have to be prepared to have the two work together and find a solution.
Yeah, agreed. And Kim Tong-Ling is asking, virtual and artificial intelligence arbitration will be the new normal, right? Do you agree?
Directed at Elaine or
Yeah, anyone.
Well, perhaps I haven't seen artificial intelligence arbitration yet, so not quite sure whether it's going to be the new normal. I think there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence being the robots and you know, robots being judges and arbitrators. So I think that's still not the new future yet. Virtual hearings as the new future, I do think that's going to be the case, because in some of my recent experience, even arbitrators who used to be big fans of in-person hearings, after experiencing a remote virtual hearing, have become converted and actually find that, at least from the perspective of the arbitrators, it does work well for them. Actually, what I do echo with what Elaine said, that this virtual hearing and remote hearings is very unsatisfactory from a client's perspective, the most unsatisfactory, because for a lot of the clients, to them, that ability to watch their own counsel cross-examine a witness in person is a huge difference. And much as you'll be able to get the same concessions and the same points made in a remote hearing, if you have very strong documents and contemporaneous documents to undermine the testimony, there are certain hearings and there are certain testimony which you can only secure if you are in an in-person hearing, because the physical presence and the ability to just be face-to-face with the witness and the tribunal, and the body gestures and the undertones that comes across is something that cannot be replicated in a remote hearing.
Right.
So to that extent, I think we can still try to ask arbitrators to, you know, and we do actually do put forward quite a strong plea to arbitrators to actually have this heard in person. And increasingly in the recent past few weeks, more and more arbitrators are turning us down. So, which is why I'm afraid that this remote virtual hearing is going to be the new normal. May or may
Yes.
not necessarily be a good thing.
Yeah, I think we could have a whole webinar on that specific issue only, and I would have lots to say as well. We have a few minutes left. There are a few questions on mentoring, so maybe we can come back to that. Tanya Singla is asking, can mentors and mentoring programs help young professionals in increasing visibility and building their brand? Who would like to answer Tanya's question? Chiann?
Sure, Julie, I'm happy to have a go at this. I've done a couple of mentoring programs, both as mentee and mentor over the years. And I have to say, it really depends on the effort of both parties, but in recent years, I've found some really productive ones. And one in particular I want to refer to is one that a friend from Portugal wrote to me and said that the CEA, the Spanish Arbitration Association, was starting a mentoring program and wanted me to be a mentor. And so she connected me with someone in New York, a young lawyer in New York, and we've just hit it off very well. And I wouldn't have thought that that would have been, you know, it was kind of out of the box thinking for CEA to kind of link the two of us up. But what has resulted is just a really great relationship, partly because we're really both supportive of each other. And so she's been supportive of my work and vice versa. We've had some very productive phone calls, and now we've kind of shifted into a more casual way of having a conversation. And I do find that there are really good synergies to be had by people of two different generations. Not the least also because our networks are different. And so she's starting to get involved in one committee work, and she's asking me for certain things and I ask her for certain things. So now we just have a nice relationship that has gone well beyond the mentor-mentee relationship.
Great. I'm afraid we're running out of time. So it will close, we will close shortly. I will give the floor to Jen Wei to close this session. Thank you on my behalf already to all the speakers.
Yes, thank you very much to all the speakers for sharing your experience and your insights with us. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you all as well, the audience, for joining us for this most informative session. I wish you all a great weekend, and everyone, please stay safe. Goodbye.
Thanks, goodbye.
Bye.